Don't say, "I love you," not yet, because if you think love is just a feeling, you've already misunderstood it. Love isn't proved when things are easy. It's revealed in the silence after a fight, in the loyalty when no one's watching, in the way someone stays when it would be easier to leave. Most people say, "I love you," too quickly, long before they understand the weight those words carry. Before you say it again, ask yourself, do you truly understand what it means? We often talk about toxic relationships in casual terms, arguments, jealousy, manipulation. But beneath those surface behaviors lies something much deeper, much more insidious. Something that sinks its roots not only into our emotional lives, but also into our unconscious minds. According to Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers in the realm of psychology and human consciousness, relationships are not just emotional entanglements or social arrangements. They are the places where the self meets its shadow, where two psyches merge, confront, and often clash with the hidden forces that dwell within. To Jung, a toxic relationship is not simply defined by pain or confusion. It is a dynamic in which one or both individuals unconsciously project their unresolved wounds onto the other, repeating patterns that slowly strip away authenticity, freedom, and psychic integrity. Understanding these signs through the lens of Jungian psychology is not about blame, it is about awakening. You are losing your sense of identity. It often begins subtly, almost imperceptibly, like the soft hush of waves lapping at a shoreline, pulling back grains of sand one at a time, not enough to notice at first, not enough to alarm, but slowly, surely, the foundation upon which you once stood begins to erode, and in the process you find yourself becoming quieter, more hesitant, less defined. In a truly toxic relationship, this erosion isn't always caused by overt control or loud manipulation. Sometimes it's the silence of being unseen, the dull ache of being misunderstood, the constant feeling of having to filter, adjust, mold yourself into a version that is more palatable, less threatening, more convenient to the other person's needs. Carl Jung believed the process of individuation, the becoming of one's full self, was the ultimate psychological journey, a sacred path toward authenticity and psychic wholeness. And yet, in a relationship where your identity is not only unrecognized, but gradually replaced with projections, demands, or silent expectations, your inner self begins to recede into shadow, hiding in the dark corners of the soul for fear that it will no longer be accepted if it steps fully into the light. When you look in the mirror and see not yourself, but a version of who they prefer you to be, you are not in love. You are in a psychic prison that masquerades as intimacy. Your shadow is being weaponized against you. There is a sacred vulnerability in the act of opening yourself to another person, of exposing not just your hopes and strengths, but your insecurities, your wounds, your past mistakes, the dark and hidden corners of your psyche that you have barely begun to understand yourself. And this act, when received with love, becomes a powerful bridge to healing, to mutual transformation. But in a toxic relationship, especially one rooted in unconscious power dynamics, what you reveal in vulnerability becomes ammunition. What was shared in trust is later twisted into control. What was offered as an invitation to deeper connection is later used to justify emotional attacks. Jung taught that the shadow, the parts of us we reject or fear, must be integrated, not denied or projected. But when your partner uses your shadow as a means of manipulation, they are not aiding your growth. They are entrenching you deeper into shame. This kind of relationship teaches you that your flaws are unacceptable, that your past disqualifies you from grace, and that love is conditional upon your silence. The tragedy is not only that you are being wounded, but that you begin to believe you deserve it, When someone wields your shadow like a weapon, they are not loving you. They are imprisoning you in your own darkness. There's a persistent feeling of emotional depletion. It's not always the fiery arguments or dramatic betrayals that define a toxic relationship. Sometimes it is the slow, suffocating exhaustion, the quiet fatigue that seeps into your bones after each interaction. The way you feel spiritually drained, even in the absence of conflict, as if simply being near this person demands the relinquishing of some vital part of your soul. You try to tell yourself that you're just tired, just stressed, just going through a rough patch, but deep down, in the stillness beneath your rationalizations, you know something is wrong. Jung understood that every relationship is a living, psychic exchange, a dance of energy between two souls, and in a healthy relationship, this exchange is reciprocal, nourishing, life-affirming. But in a toxic one, the energy flows in one direction, outward. You give, and they take and take until your emotional reservoir runs dry, and all that remains is the haunting question, when did I stop feeling like myself? The worst part is not the emptiness. It's the realization that love, something meant to be life-giving, has become a slow form of emotional starvation. A love that leaves you feeling constantly depleted is not love. It is a transaction masked as connection, a slow undoing of your inner vitality. You experience gaslighting and confusion. About reality, there is perhaps no greater violence to the soul than to be told, again and again, in subtle and overt ways, that your reality cannot be trusted, that your memory is flawed, your emotions are exaggerated, your perceptions are wrong, and over time, as this dissonance accumulates, you begin to question not just your experiences, but your very capacity for truth. What begins as confusion eventually becomes a quiet terror. If I cannot trust myself, who can I trust? Jung emphasized that the psyche thrives on integration, that the conscious and unconscious must come into dialogue to produce wholeness, and yet gaslighting severs that dialogue, splinters the psyche, and replaces internal truth with external domination. You start to rely more on the other person's version of events than your own inner knowing, not because you believe them entirely, but because your self-trust has been so thoroughly dismantled. You begin to walk through life as if in a fog, second-guessing every instinct, every memory, every emotion, until the very essence of your being feels unreliable. This is not love. This is psychological warfare dressed in the clothes of concern. And if left unchecked, it will hollow you from the inside out, leaving a shell where once there was someone who trusted herself. You are cast into a role. You cannot escape in the intricate world of human relationships. We all adopt roles, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes willingly, but in a toxic relationship, the role becomes a cage. You are no longer seen as a whole, evolving individual, but as a fixed archetype that serves the other's comfort or sense of superiority, whether that role is the caregiver, the fool, the problem, the emotional one, the weak one, the ungrateful one, or worse, the villain. Jung taught us that we must eventually transcend the persona, the social mask we wear, to truly find the self. But in a toxic dynamic, your partner resists this evolution. They need you to stay small, predictable, confined to the image they have constructed, because your growth would threaten their illusion of control. You are denied the right to change, to mature, to contradict past behaviors. Your mistakes are immortalized, but your growth is erased. And if you dare to challenge the narrative, to step outside the role, you are punished with guilt, withdrawal, or aggression. This dynamic is not just emotionally oppressive, it is spiritually stifling, for it denies your right to become, to shed old skins and emerge anew. Any relationship that fears your transformation is not love. It is a contract designed to keep you small. Your boundaries are consistently violated. At the heart of every conscious relationship lies a mutual reverence for boundaries, not as barriers to intimacy, but as the necessary framework within which true intimacy can thrive. Boundaries define where I end and you begin, what I'm responsible for and what I am not, what I welcome and what I will not tolerate. But in a toxic relationship, boundaries are not only ignored, they are seen as threats. You say no, and it's met with anger. You ask for space, and it's interpreted as rejection. You express a need, and suddenly you are selfish, cold, or too much. This repeated violation doesn't just wear down your resolve, it teaches you that setting boundaries is dangerous. Jung understood that boundaries protect the sacred space of the ego, the vessel through which the self emerges. When boundaries are chronically disrespected, what's really under attack is your sense of sovereignty, your right to exist as a whole, separate being with your own rhythms and truths. Eventually, you may stop asserting your limits altogether, not because you no longer need them, but because you've been conditioned to believe they are unacceptable. And in doing so, you abandon yourself, one compromised yes at a time. Closing thoughts. The wound is where the light enters. Carl Jung once said that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And in this context, perhaps the most important truth to carry with you is this: recognizing toxicity is not a sign of failure, it is a sign of awakening. It is the moment you begin to remember who you were before you were told who to be. It is the first step back to yourself. And it is the beginning of a sacred journey, not just away from the person who hurt you, but toward the version of yourself who no longer accepts pain in the name of love. You are not broken, you are becoming.